Congratulations on the film. I got a
Thank
chance
you.
to watch it and enjoyed it. Julian, let's start with you. Talk a little bit about what you're both the writer and the director on the film. Talk a little bit about what the impetus for writing the script was.
I've been a climber for quite a while, really, and I just, I'd done a couple of sort of action thrillers, and I fancied a real sort of 180, and I want to do something that was a bit closer to my heart, really, sort of doing a sort of a coming of age story about the mountains seemed to make sense to me. I mean, briefly, I would say that one of my inspirations was there's a very, very famous book and film called Touching the Void about Joe Simpson in Peru and the rope being cut, et cetera, et cetera. But he did a prequel book called This Game of Ghosts about a bunch of 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds hanging out in Chamonix, sleeping on each other's floors, working as alpine binmen with no man, but just doing all this really wonderful sort of high-level climbing and having these incredible adventures with absolutely no money and, getting in fights in bars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought to myself, that sounded like a fun kind of youth culture / adventure that I think I would like to that I was influenced by him because I'd climbed a lot in the Alps.
Freddie, tell us a little bit about what attracted you to this script, and do you have a climbing background? Is that something that had interested you?
I mean, I had climbed before, but on indoor walls. I definitely had an interest in the culture, but no, I wouldn't say I was a climber. I auditioned for it like anything else. I don't think I'd even be sent the script at that point. It was just an interesting looking character. And as I started progressing through the rounds of auditions, I think I got sent the script and I totally fell in love with the character and the writing. And eventually Julian, once I got offered the role, we spoke and it was something I was really passionately involved with.
Yeah. So for both of you, talk a little bit about achieving some of the climbing scenes. That's really a tough thing to make convincing. Talk a little bit about how much of it was real, how much of it was green screen, and how you achieved that.
I'll go first. I mean, I had this advantage that we weren't going to shoot the entirety of the film in one fell swoop. We were going to have a couple of sort of go out and film some climbing sections, which were initially planned to be with doubles, stunt people, et cetera, et cetera. Freddie just came across as very physically able very early on when we'd shot a few bits and pieces. And so then I sort of realized, and the other climbers and the other IFMGI guys realized very quickly that Freddie could do a lot more than just say lines and look nice. So what we did was but on a serious note. So we joke, but he was very physically able and very physically up for doing some of this really, really cool climbing. And of course, that for me makes it so much more exciting because I can make him. I'm not now limited to always going wide, close up, wide, and you get into that rhythm, almost watching it as a viewer, knowing when you're coming in for your tight shot of the actor and going back out wide and it clearly isn't the actor. And I was able to do so many mid-wides on Freddie. I mean, even without ruining the film, but the last shot of the film, I won't say any more of it than that, but it is a climbing shot. We had to be in enough to see it was Freddie, but not so far in that it could just be him against a polystyrene wall 10 feet up or something. So, it was it was an interesting experience, really. So how much is real? A hell of a lot of it. There's a few green screen shots when you have a drop of people below them. You're always going to have a few effect shots. But Freddie did, as I said, one of his shots, he had a 300-meter drop directly below him, and it was all real, completely.
Yeah. So Freddie, talk about that. I mean, was that
terrifying? It was
terrifying for you?
Yeah, I mean, not really. There was obviously some scary bits, but, pretty soon after I signed on, I kind of understood that Julian had a background in climbing. I mean, he'd taken on some pretty epic things himself, and he was quickly educating me in the world of climbing from his experience purely. And then it started to unfold more and more that perhaps they'd want me to do these things for real. And I'm not one to shy away from adventure. So I think probably for their own sake, they probably had to feel out that I wasn't just more brazen than I was sensible. And we went to Snowdonia, and me and Julian just had a weekend in Snowdonia with an English climbing guide. And I suppose it was that was an audition in itself. And it was a great chance to get to know Julian, and we discussed the script lots and kind of learned to climb. And then very quickly we were out there doing it for real. I mean, yeah, and to answer your question, pretty much all of it was real. We had to basically fake a few sequences, but again, they were on real pieces of rock, and with all the real equipment, it's just, to actually do some of those sequences, they just had to be in slightly less precarious situations than the actual film. But there wasn't one studio shot or studio day. Everything was on the real rock.
Yeah, that's impressive. So for both of you, talk about a scene that maybe you'll remember most shooting, and why.
Do you want to go first?
Freddie, I would just say Freddie's probably not the same as mine. I'm going to say Freddie go first there, because I don't know.
Well, I mean, we've actually been asked this in a couple of previous interviews, and I mean, yeah, I could choose one, but in all seriousness, like I'd say 60% of the scenes in this movie, and I can't say this about many movies, is memorable for some reason or another. So I could go off on a completely different one and say, yeah, the last shot of the film, I don't know if you've seen it or not yet, but I mean, whether you're an actor filming a film or just anyone doing what we did there, that's a pretty memorable experience.
Yeah. For me, I suppose it's about piecing these sections together. I mean, for me, if I have to choose one small piece of the film, it was summiting the Matterhorn with Freddie, because we'd already done some aerial footage with a couple of doubles the year before, so doing some very specific moves like handshake on the summit and waving the ice axes, and I wanted to recreate it 11 months later in September. And so I said, expecting to get a massive big no from the producers. I'm like, look, I think we can get Freddie up the Matterhorn. And then, I think I was laughed at about 3 times. I went, no, we can do this. Trust me, look. And they're like, what, really? And I kept pushing it. And then, of course, we spoke to Freddie's team, and I sent them a sort of, lots of pictures and images and blah, blah, blah. And, just to get to that summit, I mean, the amount of work and acclimatization to get to this summit, to just get 4 or 5 or 6 shots that are as real as, anything, and really would never have been scheduled into any movie, except possibly Tom Cruise. But apart from that, nobody. That was probably about my most memorable experience, was just having one camera, one actor, one guide. Crazy. Really.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the You Interview channel. With over 3,000 original celebrity videos, we have one of the largest collections of celebrity interviews anywhere. So remember to like and comment on our videos and subscribe to the channel. If you want to get more involved, you can become a member of the channel. Membership has its perks. You can see exclusive celebrity videos and get the opportunity to ask our celebrity guests questions. We can't wait to hear from you.